All right, guys, got a Dodge Charger here. I'm not sure what year it is just yet. I need to look at the VIN label, but customer backed into his own vehicle with a bike rack. Punched a hole here. Got some wrinkled paint up here and a little bit of a ridge in the bumper right there. Then I'm gonna have to just heat and get that out. I think there's another spot here. Some cracked paint through here, all through here, and a little bit of a dent here. Bit of a wave. I think that's it. I'll walk you through taking this off as soon as I figure it out. Alright guys, get these parts back out. There's 3 push clips or push pins in the wheel well. One down here like this. One down there, one halfway up, one at the top. Also a 10mm bolt up through the corner, through that hole, and as soon as you get that back, you can unplug the side marker, which is this right here. Same on the other side. I looked underneath, doesn't look like there's anything that's got to be detached. Looks like the impact absorber is actually built into the bumper, or at least put on the bumper before it's put in. So I'm going to go ahead and get the part off the back. I got to see what I need to get off in the back here, but the other side will be the same as this. All right, I've got a plastic trim tool prying this gap open for me. You can see there's 1, 2 clips holding it, and over here there's a little bit of something protruding through, but it's cut out around it. You can barely see that. So I need to just work it off those 2 hooks. If I can't do that, I'll have to pull the tail light, but there's nothing in the tail light that's holding the bumper on. Completely clear, so I think it's going to be held just right in there and along here, and the same thing on that tail light. I shouldn't have to pull the tail lights. We'll see. If I can't work it off these hooks, I'm going to have to. It's not wanting to come out very easily, and I don't want to break it. I'm just going to pull this. I got this pulled back here. I'm just going to pull the two nuts off. There's just one locator on the far end, and I've already got it disconnected. So basically just the 2 nuts there, and I should have it off. Alright, here it is. There's just one plastic grommet that it was snapped into there, and then the 2 nuts through those holes. I'm going to have to put the taillights back in. He's going to have to drive this for the time it takes me to fix this. He's just leaving it for the night for me to get this off. I'm going to leave the car out in the morning for me to pick up. But there's actually a 3rd one here that I couldn't see, which I knew something had to be here. But there's not a good way to lift it and get it off those hooks without damaging this edge, trying to reach through with a tool to grab that. So I went ahead and pull those out. That just make life easier. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, and it should just pop off in here. And now that I've lifted it off these hooks and pulled it back, it actually came out of this this retainer here that's got this rubber seal. Just popped right out of this. There's a piece underneath that grabs into that bracket, but it just popped right out. And there's this extra seal here that I thought I was going to have to take off the bumper, but it stayed on the car. So right now I'm just going to pull it back. It's basically free, but I'm going to have these backup sensors attached. I believe I saw the connector on this side when I was underneath. So I'm just going to have to pull back this side and disconnect it, and it should be able to drop down on this blanket. Okay, there was enough slack in it for me to just set it down. As soon as I pulled it off, it kind of fell, and there was enough slack in this. Right here, I'll just have to pull this connector off, and I'm going to try to seal it up with some tape just while he drives it, just to keep any kind of debris out as much as I can. And there's actually a 7mm right here that holds the bumper to this bracket, but this side apparently was broken because when I took the clips out, it was free. So I didn't think I needed to take that out. And the one on the other side is still attached right there, so I'm going to run that out, and that should be the last of it. The other side, I noticed that this part right here, the bumper should go, or this should go between, this little piece should go inside a piece in the bumper there. Bumper should be tucked in behind it. It was actually on the outside of the outside of the bumper there, so this piece was actually visible. So she's backed over this, or something happened under here to break that at one time. It didn't happen from this, but what I might do is take this off the bumper and take this piece here and just bond it back to this, and just tell the customer that I found that, because that's not related to what happened to the back end of the bumper here. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull it off, and I'll get that piece off the bumper and rebond it. Well, I decided to go ahead and take this bottom trim off. I debated on just taping it off, but it was a really tight fit there, and I didn't want to have to sand right up next to that plastic, the textured plastic, and end up getting paint on it or scratching it. It was actually riveted on right in here. Now these pieces are riveted to a bracket that's riveted to the bumper, so I'm just going to leave all that, but there's a rivet similar to that in here holding the plastic, and I'll just put like a speed nut and a screw or something on it. When I go back to reinstall it, there's no reason to go buy two of these big rivets. So now I can get all the way down past that edge and sand it, and I can just mask off the bottom section, which I would have had to do anyway. I also had to take out the inner piece, energy absorber right here. That had to come off to then get this piece off. So what I'm going to do now is just go through with the heat gun and just get this really hot and get the basic shape back into it. It's just a little low here, and there's actually some scratches in it here. I don't know if that was from the accident or not. I know this was, but I'm gonna have to heat this, get the shape back in it. Also in here, see, try to get that little bit of a dent out there, and then this low spot here where it took the rest of the hit. But some of this in here, you can see there's a little bit of a bulge right there. I'm trying to heat that up, get that down. There's another one over here. You can see there's just a little high spot. This ought to be flat. Once I get the shape back in it, then I'll go back to the back side and I'll get the back side of this repaired. That way I can flip it over and just focus on the front and get all the damage repaired on the front side and get it primed. I'll have to take from about here all the way over through the top portion over into somewhere in here. I'll have to take the paint off because it's cracked. So I'm going to end up priming basically this area right in here all the way across the back, the top of the back edge, and some of this up here. I'm going to try to mask it off down in here somewhere so I don't get primer on this area. This doesn't need any primer, so the least primer I can put on it the better, or the less primer the better, because it's flexible. I'm trying to keep the film build to a minimum. But I'm going to go ahead and get the heat gun, just work at this, get it hot and push it, try to get it back in shape, and I'll be back when I get ready to do the actual repair. Alright, I've done all my heating and bending around and straightening, so I've got this, mainly just heated this area and it sort of straightened itself out. And I trimmed off the pieces that were protruding through, that were sticking out through the hole, because all the material came through to the back side. So I trimmed it off, but it's kind of melted it back down flat. I'm going to hit this area with my belt sander and clean this up, rough it, and get it flat right in here at least. And then I'm going to put a piece of tape on the back side just to plug the hole up. I'm going to do the back side repair with the 5887 flexible repair adhesive. And I may even drop a piece of fiberglass like drywall screen back there just to reinforce it. And then I can flip it over to the front and do everything on the front once this is hardened up. Alright, I'm just going to run it at a slow speed. If you run it fast, you'll melt the plastic and just smear it everywhere. Normally I would use just a grinder in here, but I can't really fit it in this tight area. Area I may have to do this by hand with some 80 or 180, but I'm going to go around at least a couple of inches around the hole just to get a good surface area for the adhesive to lay on, so I can get some good bond area. Alright, now I'm going to cut the fuzzy hair out of the inside. Then I'll put some tape on the back, spray a little adhesion promoter over this, let that tack up for 10 or 15 minutes, then I can put the filler on it. All right, I've got it taped up. I'm just gonna hit it with a light coat of adhesion promoter. And try to make sure I get it down inside the hole. You give that about 5 minutes and do another light coat. And then this takes a 15-minute flash time before I can put anything over it. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the glue ready to go. So once this thing's ready and flashed, I can put it on. All right, I've got the glue ready to go. I ran about a 3 or 4 inch bead out of it to get this to mix properly. This has to be completely filled to get enough back pressure at the tip to be able to mix properly. So I'm gonna get it started inside the hole and then work my way around the hole so I don't get an air pocket in it. And whatever's in the hole is probably gonna get mostly sanded out when I go and dish out the front side, but I'm going to start in the center so that it contacts the inside of the hole. And just keep it submerged in the puddle there so I don't get any air in it. That'll be good for a first layer there. I'm going to get this spread out. I've got a spreader cut down about 1/3 of normal width. And spread it into those sand scratches nice and tight. And come back and just wipe it over once I get it in the scratches really well. And you don't want to build this up real thick back here, because if it's in contact with a piece of foam or the actual bumper rebar, it'll put a high spot in the bumper when it gets installed. So I'm going to get it nice and flat. I'm going to drop in this piece of fiberglass screen I've got, just as a little bit of reinforcement right over the hole. Work that down in there. Try not to actually drag it away from where I want to leave it. Put a little bit more material on top, just so that I can embed that screen a little bit more. It's going to pull the screen some, but I'll just pull it back the other direction. And this stuff will actually flow, so this should sort of flatten itself out here. Do a little cleanup here and then we'll be done. All right, that ought to be good. I'm gonna let that set up for about 10 or 15 minutes. We can flip it over and start on the outside. All right, I've got the bumper flipped over, and this is what's left on the outside after I pull the tape. So I'm gonna dish this out with 180 on a DA. I've got the backup sensor insert taped off. Those are bonded to the bumper and they can't come out, so I'm trying not to damage that at all, and I'm trying to keep the primer off of it also, just so it could be a nice crisp edge in here and not look like I did anything to it when I'm done. I'm going to dish all this out where it's, I don't know, maybe a 1/16 of an inch lower than everything else, and just transition that up to the good spot, so I'll have kind of a bold area right here. BOWLED. I'll fill this in with the same stuff, and then I can block that out. But I'm going to go ahead and do this area and all the other areas, like right over here, that needs to be sanded through and needs some filler. I got the shape pretty much there. I just need a little bit of filler over all the damage, and then to get just a little bit of the low spot out. All this in here came out pretty well. The ridges that were left in the back of the bumper, I just heated all that and just pressed in on it while it was cooling, try to flatten it out. So we got a spot here that needs some filler. This is just where the paint split when I heated it. But there's just a little bit of a low spot in here. I worked a little bit of that up with a couple of my PDR tools while it was hot, and just kind of made it as flat as I could get it. I'm still going to fill that area. Same issue here. I need to keep from damaging these inserts here. So we've got this area, and this one that are the main damage. There's a couple spots like right in here, but I can prime that out, and at least I think I can. And all this area in here has got to be sanded off, at least through the cracked paint. So I'm just going to get the filler in where it needs to be, then I'll start sanding everything off that needs to come off. Taking this down to the bare plastic. This is 180 grit. Probably going to need a grinder right in the center just to get down into the area that needs to be filled. But all this out here is going to be DA. I'm going to go get probably the belt sander and maybe the grinder just to kind of get down inside here and get this roughed up. But I'll be back with some filler. All right, filler's set up for about at least a couple of days. I haven't been able to get back on this. I'm just going to break it open with a DA with 180, then I'll block it all out. And once I have it blocked out, I can just prime over it, but I'll have to go around and sand everywhere the primer is going to hit. So basically the whole back end of the bumper needs to be sanded. I got to sand the whole thing anyway. I may just sand the whole bumper, get it ready for paint, and then I'll just prime it and then feather back into it. But I don't really want to prime down in here. That's just kind of a waste of material, and I'll just have to sand it also. So what I'm probably going to do is just back mask in here, turn the tape back to get a soft edge, and I'll go a little further down on this area where I've got some filler for some of the gouges. But I don't really want to prime down in here, so it's mainly going to be from here all the way across, including the back here, because I had to sand all this fractured paint out, and then just right over into here and right here. I'm going to go ahead and just break this open and get it blocked out, and I'll come back when I got the primer ready. All right, I'm nearly ready for primer. Just need to do a wipe down on it. I'm going around sanding these backup sensors down in the seam with a fiberglass pen just to get right down inside the transition there from one to the other. These are melted into the bumper. You can't take them out without destroying it. So I've got all these sanded around, just going around the perimeter of each one, and then I'm going to go inside with a scuff pad and scuff the inside edge. I don't really want to prime those, but these I can kind of mask off. I need some primer. There's actually a little bit of a kind of a divot right in here that really can't even see now that I've sanded it, but I can fill it in with some primer. I may try to take some fine line tape, just tape this off. I just don't want to build up a lot of primer on these things, because I don't want to bridge that gap. It'll look really bad if I bridge primer across that gap and fill it in. So I'm going to try to mask it off, but we'll see. I can always come back with this and sand it down, just to at least to leave a groove in it. I'm going to get this finished up. Got it sanded pretty much all the way down. I'm going to We're gonna do this later. I just gotta go ahead and get the primer on it. But everywhere the primer is gonna land, it's sanded. And then over here, I went a little further. Since I'm gonna have to bring the primer down to here, I'm gonna try to kind of tape it along this edge here and then up and over where I've sanded, just to get a soft edge here in it, but I don't want to get primer down there. Wanting to blend the ends if I can, so trying to leave the ends alone as much as possible. Be back in a second. All right, this is 2 coats of primer. I'm going to put a third and probably a fourth over the bodywork areas. I've got fuzzy plastic, so I've got to build it up thick enough to be able to block it out. You see that? You've got to build it up enough to be able to sand that out. So I'm probably going to end up putting 4 coats over the bodywork areas. But I'll get these other coats on and that'll be it. Okay, we're ready to go here. I'm going to give it 1 coat of 222S adhesion promoter and give that just long enough to flash for me to mix up the base coat and come back over it. That way the 222S in the ends area here will be blended into while it's still wet. I'm going to apply it over the entire surface, that way I can fill in all the sand scratches since I'm not putting sealer on it. All right, base coat's next. All right, I'm ready to put the base coat on it. Now 2 coats ought to cover the primer, but I may have to put a 3rd light coat after I let it dry completely so that all the scratches will disappear. With sealer, I don't have to worry about that, but if I seal this, I would be getting sealer down into my blend area, and I don't want to do that. Now ideally, I would have a dark gray primer on this, but I don't keep that. I just keep regular medium gray. But I would need to put a couple of coats over it anyway just to make sure I get good coverage. But in this case, I might need a light 3rd coat. We'll see. And that was more like about half a coat. I don't want those feather edges frying up on me and showing, so I got the base coat on kind of lightly. I'll let that go for a few minutes and I'll come back over it. All right, I had a little bit of a fry up on an edge here. You can see that's where the primer wasn't completely feathered into the original clear. And down in here I got it feathered in, and that looked like it wasn't completely feathered in, and turns out it wasn't. So I'm gonna let this dry for a few more minutes and come back with 1000 with it wet and just sand those out, and then just I'll dust the next coat on this area. I may have to do it a second time, we'll see. But this will be okay once I get all this leveled off and get it cleared. I may have to buff that spot a little bit after a day or two if it's sitting, but that's what happens when you don't get the primer completely feathered into your original finish there with a nice rough deep scratch. All right, I feathered it back to the primer. I'll just start over in that spot. That way I can just kind of eliminate any issues later on with the clear dyeing back and showing it. As long as I can get this right and it's feathered in, clear should be fine. Okay, right now it looks pretty good. I'm gonna let it sit for about 5 minutes, dry up, and I'll see what I have to do to it then, if anything. Time for clear. Alright, that'll get a 5-minute flash. One more coat. I just about forgot to video this final product for you guys. Actually didn't have to buff any of it. And I used the HC7776S clear on this. Didn't need any buffing at all. I mean, there were some real tiny dust nibs, but not anything visible from the angle you look at it with it on the car. Just wasn't worth messing with. Especially on black, you get some swirls that are hard to get out. Not really worth putting the swirl in to begin with and having to get it out. And you can see right here where all the damage was. And the hole was right in there. Kind of a pain working around those sensors, but you gotta do what you gotta do. See you guys on the next one.